Hello there and welcome. This is Mikhail or Michael speaking, and as always, before the start of the video, I want to express my gratitude towards those who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal, or Super Thanks. Thank you friends, and have a blessed day. There are a lot of quite interesting news that I have for you today, so let's start with the Zaporizhian front and the Avdiivka direction. In the last 24 hours, there were reported Ukrainian attacks from Novodanilovka in the direction of Robotyne, as well as from Malotokmachka in the direction of Novopokrovka. Both of these attacks did not achieve anything, and Russians were able to successfully defend against these assaults. Most interesting news are coming from the Avdiivka direction here. It would seem that Ukrainians completely abandoned the idea of advancing their armor in masses alongside the roads and open fields and started to use mostly infantry, that they are moving across these force lines in attempt to conceal them. But unfortunately for them, they are not always successful at that. Russians are spotting them and destroying them, as you can see here on this video of Russian artillery shelling these force lines. This general change of tactic does not allow Ukrainians to concentrate a strong enough punch to penetrate Russian defensive lines here. Usually the most they can do is to initially penetrate Russian defensive positions here to the northeast of Robotyne. However, despite hard fighting, they weren't able to reach the outskirts of Robotyne in any of these attacks. Once again, they are spotted easily as they advance and mostly destroyed even before reaching the front line. Then from here, let's move to the Zherebyanki-Lobkova situation. Here, there were no reported Ukrainian attacks from Pyatikhatki in the direction of Zherebyanki. Mostly this is explained by the fact that Ukrainians are still unable to gain full control over the settlements. They establish some defensive positions within the settlement in attempt to use it as a bridgehead for future advancements in the direction of Zherebyanki and Lugova. However, Russians are spotting these temporary positions and shelling them heavily. Here is the video of that. Then from here, let's move to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. Here, Ukrainians were assaulting in the direction of Marfapil and Darzhnyanka. These attacks also were unsuccessful, and Ukrainians were unable to advance here. The situation here is the same. Ukrainians are forced to advance along the easily visible roads and many open fields, which does not allow them any concealment, and because of that, they are being subjugated to Russian artillery strikes. Then finally, let's move to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. Ukrainian attacks here were not dying down at all. They were assaulting from Livadne in the direction of Priutne, as well as from Novodarivka and Rivnopol towards Russian positions located in between Staromayorsky and Priutne. These attacks were unsuccessful. There were also assaults in the direction of Novodonetsky, which did not see success as well. Here for you I have a video of Ukrainian tank being destroyed somewhere in the fields of Zaporizhia, hard to say where exactly. Interesting news are coming from the settlement of Urozhaine and Staromayorsky. Here let me zoom it for you so you can see how they look. Here, Ukrainians were continuously assaulting across the open fields in the direction of Urozhaina. However, this attack failed due to the fact that Russians have all the possibilities to counter-attack Ukrainian forces across the open field and easily spot them as they advance on these fields. It would seem Ukrainian assaults in the direction of Staromayorsk from Makarovka and across the open fields here were partially successful, as some report suggests. Ukrainians were able to initially enter the settlement of Staromayorsk and establish a bridgehead here. However, they were immediately counterattacked by the Russians and were forced to retreat. There's an interesting video of Ukrainian armored personnel vehicles advancing within Makarovka settlement and being heavily shelled by the Russians. From here, let's quickly move around the battlefield. First, let's visit Vuhledar. Here, Ukrainians and Russians were in a way active, assaulting each other in short order. However, these assaults were of limited number. Ukrainians were trying to advance in the direction of Pavlivka, as Russians were advancing in the direction of Vuhledar and the mines right here. However, all of these assaults, both Russians and Ukrainians, were repelled by their enemies. Then from Vuhledar, let's visit situation near Marinka. Russians continued their advance in the direction of Novomikhailivka, Pobeda, within the Marinka settlement and to its northern flank. However, all these attacks were repelled by the Ukrainian forces. Here is a photo of how Marinka looks like currently. Sad sight to see. This city once was a home to 10,000 of hard-working citizens, and now I'm not even sure this city can be rebuilt and repopulated. Then from Marinka, let's move to the Avdiivka. First, let's touch Pervomaisky situation. As Russians advanced in the direction of Nevelske and in the direction of Pervomaisky and Vodyane, Ukrainians did everything in their power to stop Russians before they were able to take any significant gains. And as of right now, it would seem that those kind of operations were successful. Russians were unable to advance here anywhere on the front line. In Avdiivka sector, situation was somewhat the same. Both Russians and Ukrainians are not settling idle here as well. Here, Ukrainians are attacking in the direction of Vodyane and Apitne, as well as Kamyanka, Vesely, and Krasnogorovka. Russians fight back, not allowing them to gain anything in this sector. Thus, both Russians and Ukrainians are mostly tangled in positional style of warfare, and artillery duels and counter-battery activities are raging on this front line. Then from Avdiivka, let's move to the most interesting as of right now part of the front line, to Bakhmut. First, let's touch situation around Klishchiivka and its near settlements. Russians were mostly on the defense on this front line, as Ukrainians were assaulting in the direction of Ozornikivka and Kurdyumovka. However, these attacks were repelled by the Russians. If you remember in the last video, I said that Ukrainians were able to establish a small bridgehead to the east of the canal, and they are now using it to attack in the direction of Andriivka. However, as the time of recording, Russian defensive lines are holding out here. Then let's move to Kurdyumovka. Situation here was developing. Ukrainians did not stop attacking here in any way whatsoever. They were continuously assaulting Russian positions in front of the settlement all across the front line. Somewhere they were successful, somewhere they weren't. For example, Russians are much more successful counter-attacking Ukrainian forces here in this sector. However, situation right in front of Klishchiivka remains to be most difficult for the Russians, as this is where Ukrainians are using most of their assault power in attempt to capture this extensive trench line network. Here in the Bakhmut city itself, there were reports of limited Ukrainian assaults, or should I say attempts at advancing within this dacha area, as well as here. However, these attacks were unsuccessful as Russian artillery stopped them in their tracks. Then from here, let's move to the Berkhivka-Yagodne sector. In the last 24 hours, Ukrainians were assaulting Russian positions that are located in front of these settlements, but were unsuccessful at that. After that, Russians were on the offensive here. They counter-attacked and were able to regain some of the positions in front of Berkhivka and Yagodne, and this is how much exactly they were able to capture. So as you can see, generally not much, but Russians are slowly but surely advancing in the direction of this chokehold, which will provide them with better defensive positions, as Ukrainians will be forced to advance only within this open field, with reservoir on one side, with Russian-controlled territory on the other side of it, and another reservoir to the other side. So perhaps this is what Russians are doing by counter-attacking and taking territories here near Berkhivka. Then from here, let's visit the Serebryensky Forest and General Liman direction. The fighting within the Serebryensky Forest continued and continued all throughout the last 24 hours. Russians were on the assault here, but timely Ukrainian counterattacks were able to repel these attacks, with Russians having limited success here. Russians were also advancing from Dibrova and from this ledge in the direction of Torsky and Yampalivka. Local small success here is reported as of right now. Then interesting news are coming from this front line, where apparently, according to some of the news, and as you can see by the picture here, Russians were able to penetrate Ukrainian defensive lines, cross the Zherebets River in between settlement of Novodyane and Karmazinivka, and establish a bridgehead. Then let's move to the situation near the settlement of Novovasilevsky. It is being reported by mostly pro-Russian sources that the settlement is already under Russian control, and just now Ukrainian sources confirmed capture of the train station. So as you can see here, information differs a lot. As to who to believe is up to you. In any way, this is the reality. Russians are claiming that the settlement of Novovasilevsky is under their control, and Ukrainians are claiming that the battle fort just started. Then from here, let's quickly visit Kupyansk frontline. There are no territorial changes here. However, it is being reported that Russians were able to advance about 2.5 kilometers deep somewhere within this front line. As to where exactly is still unclear. My guess is their advancements towards Sinikivka. This is the next logical step if Russians plan to advance further towards settlement of Kupyansk. There are interesting news in Crimea, or to be more precise, Crimean Bridge. As report suggests, at neither 3:05 or 4:05 of the local time, Ukrainian naval drones were able to sneak by Russian defensive lines and explode right below the bridge, damaging it, as you can see on this video. The fact that the explosion was underneath the bridge is shown here on this video because you can see there is no damage on top of the bridge and mostly underneath it. Generally, as you can see, this is a pretty serious damage and would take some time to repair it. In any way, this is the end of the video. As you can see, although there are almost no territorial changes that happened in the last 48 to 24 hours, situation is been developing in an interesting way. I hope this video was to your liking, and if it was, please consider supporting it with a like, comment, and if you haven't subscribed, a subscription. I can't stress enough how important it is for me and for YouTube algorithms. Thank you in advance. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.